Climb aboard. This is the Miles to Go podcast. And now here's your host, Ed Pizza.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Miles to Go podcast. Mr. Kerr and I are both going to be out on the road for the next week or so, but we're catching up here for podcast time with Kerr and Pizza. How are you doing, sir?
Pretty good. Had a great week in New York City. We're back home. We are flying around this weekend with the opening day of the baseball games. Had a rival dad going away party last night. Have so many tactical and administrative things to get done today before I head off to Tucson, Arizona, a new airport destination for me this week. So excited for that.
Never been to Tucson, huh?
Never been to Tucson. I'm going to check out the Pima Air and Space Museum, which actually looks awesome. I'm flying in on the early flight, so I have time to go check that out. Then still trying to pick a hotel. A lot of really interesting and cool-looking resorts in the mountains of Tucson. But not too much going on in downtown Tucson from a hotel point of view where the convention is that I'm very, very quickly doing a drive-by through. So we'll figure it out. But there's like Ritz-Carlton Dove Mountain out there I've always heard about. The Miraval is about an hour from downtown Tucson. There's the JW out there. Some good options up in the foothills. So I'm not sure where I'm going to end up yet. But a lot of driving either way is kind of the downside of that. Or I could say at the luxurious DoubleTree Hilton right across the street from the convention center. But I don't think I want to do that. So
not sure why. That sounds pretty spectacular. Yeah, Tucson has interesting options. There's some nice walkable areas downtown. But yeah, unless you're doing Airbnb or something like that, you're not going to, I don't think you're going to find much in downtown. I'm surprised you've never been there.
Why? What? I guess what reason? No reason to ever go out to Tucson.
Graveyard, man. Airplane graveyards.
Yeah, they don't do tours of that anymore. They apparently used to do tours of it, which would have been really cool, but not anymore. So I think it's on the Air Force Base out there.
Well, let me give folks a recap of what we're going to talk through, and then I have a catch-up question for you. Not catch-up like what you put on a burger, Mr. Kerr, but I need to catch up with you on something. So we're going to talk about Marriott and whether they actually still believe in loyalty. United lifetime status changes, and I will try my best not to give us the first explicit rating of our illustrious podcast here when we discuss that. A listener question, we've got a Slack user question, we've got a bizarre new fee, well, potential new, but something you and I didn't know about from Frontier, and then if we get some time to talk about it, I'm seeing some pretty generous, City American Airlines credit card offers out there, which honestly hasn't been something that they've been pretty high on in the past. But the thing I want to catch up with you on is, you and I talked briefly about your first flight, after the blood clot scare, and you talked about, be a little apprehensive on the plane and stuff like that. Now that you've had some time, flight up to New York and back, I imagine you probably haven't had any pain, or I would have heard about it. But I'm just curious for you to give folks and me, like a minute or two on, now that you've been through this, where's your head at? How you feeling? How's the leg feel?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely a little bit of apprehension there in the back of the Delta A220, which I flew actually round trip to Newark and back this week. Ended up great plane to fly in the back. Compression socks. I a bunch of reading and talking to the docs, right? It's once you're on blood thinners, your risk of getting a clot is not zero, but it's pretty close to zero down there. And then staying hydrated. I haven't drank in almost a month now. Not a single beer or anything. Just mixing booze with blood thinners doesn't sound like too good of. Everything you read online is like, yeah, you can have one beer, but it makes you more prone to some internal bleeding stuff that you got to worry about. So, trying to feel good here. I guess like while on blood thinners, I'm not too worried about it. I did again, like about every hour I would do it, and then I would do like the calf pumps thing, which I'm sure I'll do on every flight from now on, especially long flight to Tucson, right? I mean, it's 3 hours plus in the air this week that I'll have to do, and I got an aisle seat, and every hour I'll get up and do a quick lap up and down the aisle. I guess it's more once I'm off blood thinners, which you got to be on for 3 months. Once you're off blood thinners again, that will be, I guess, the next level of apprehension to see if it happens again. But, doing a bunch of blood tests to make sure that there's no underlying conditions that cause this. And I just, got dehydrated or have been on the road too much and just got unlucky. Hopefully is the deal there. So probably not too much anxiety or anything. Assuming that this first long flight goes well this week until the blood thinners are gone. And then, assuming that all the blood tests come back that there's no underlying condition, I'll just chalk it up to an unlucky streak right there. But I'm telling you, this is maybe it's always been this big. So many people have blood clot stories that have either worked out to be nothing or have been catastrophic for the people that are involved. I just mentioned I had the going away party at the rival dads last night. As I've said many times, many of them are pilots here 30 minutes from the Atlanta airport.
Right.
And so many of them came back and they're like, dude, I just flew with a guy this week and we were talking about it. And he caught a pulmonary embolism from a blood clot, and they had to put, the catheter up his vein through his leg and inject the medicine right into it. But it was like clearly obvious that he was like, I could breathe, but it felt like something was sitting on my chest and I couldn't breathe fine. So other people sent me lots of stories. So I'm just telling you, ladies and gentlemen, like, take your precautions, wear your compression socks, get up and move, stay hydrated. And if you think that you have a blood clot, go find somebody who can do a vein scan and get it resolved. So it's prevalent, I guess I would call it.
I have a number of friends and colleagues that have been through this, so it wasn't foreign to me when you had it. But those folks are. I don't have the same special relationship with them that I do with you, Mr. Kerr. So I haven't asked them that the like those afterthoughts of like when they get back on planes and what it's like and what precautions they take and stuff like that. So appreciate you sharing that. I would imagine if I did have a clot that I'd be pretty nervous, for the next gosh knows how long. And I would imagine next time you have some phantom leg pain, that knock on wood, I hope is not a clot. It's definitely going to give you some second thoughts.
Yeah. So we'll see how the 3+ hour flight goes, and then hopefully fine.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, especially when we start talking about what you and I do of flying overseas and Asian flights, stuff like that. It's like that's a lot of time to get up and down. And I know you're normally an aisle seat guy anyway, but makes as we get older, makes you think twice about taking that window seat and being stuck and not being able to get up every half hour, an hour.
I mean, that's typically never been an option for me. Like, I will change a flight to get into an aisle seat, and then that would just be super. Like, there will be a time where I have to do a last minute flight change or get somewhere, and the only thing open is an aisle or a window, and I'll just unfortunately tell the person when I'm boarding, hey, just so you know, sorry, man, you can switch seats if you want. If you don't, this is going to be super annoying, but I'm going to get up every hour so that I don't catch a blood clot. So just FYI, ma'am or sir, like, sorry about that.
Yeah, things are still pretty, like, there's a couple of flights I've booked where it wasn't quite as pricey as it has been in past years on United, but I'm still seeing really high fares. But also a byproduct of that is if I'm booking last minute like you and I normally do, within 2 weeks, it's almost always middle seats available. And then I'm waiting for an aisle or a window to open up, and I've had to take my fair share of windows over the past X number of months. And to your point, like old man bladder, I got to get up, so I piss off my seatmates when I'm getting up every hour or so on the flight. All right, a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll dig into some topics here. Text us at 571-293-6659. We do have a text question from a listener coming up. He is at Kerr Points on all those social media channels. I am at Pizza in Motion. You can find Miles to Go podcast on TikTok and Instagram. And as of time of recording, TikTok does still exist. And if you'd like to join our Slack community, which you've also got a Slack question coming up, a few bucks a month to help support the show. And we've got weekly happy hours. We've got some meetups coming out throughout the year. And we've got our Slack community with a bunch of different channels where you can have travel experts like Mr. Kerr and I answer your questions. I think the best place to start this week, Mr. Kerr, is a topic that you dropped into our group chat with Howie about Marriott's new hotel brand and a pretty unique feature that the keen marketing team that named the brand Studio Res has come up with. You want to tee up here what is so wonderful and unique about the new Studio Res brand from a Marriott Bonvoy loyalty standpoint?
Yeah, this is from the frequent miler Timothy who wrote this. Tim over there, the ever-present frequent miler AI generated images there that they have thrown into their stories, which always give me a kick. But new quote-unquote light touch extended stay brand that offers lower rates for long stays. If you are a Marriott Bonvoy member and you stay at Studio Res, you will receive no elite night credits. You will receive no elite point bonuses. And instead of the 10 points per dollar that you get at full service brands, and some of the brands have 5 points per dollar, at Studio Res, you will get 4 points per dollar. That's interesting, man. I guess is the way that we'll call this. Unfortunately, really from a complexity thing, right? Something that we're always trying to solve for in the day job is simplicity across the board in everything we do, because we know how complex this world is. It's another thing to keep track of. I would imagine that 98% of people staying at Studio Res are not going to read the fine print. And this is going to be a surprise to them when they get their statement afterwards, especially if you're doing a long-term stay, and you're like, oh, sweet, I got to be at this, job site for 10 days. I'm going to get 10 of my elite nights towards the next level of platinum status or, whatever status done, and they get 0. That's going to be a little bit of an ugly surprise for them. So I'm very curious to see what Marriott's going to do to communicate this ahead of time for stays, and if they are. But man, that is, if they're really going into cost-saving mode to offer as low rates as possible for extended stay, this is it's one lever that they've certainly come up with to pull. How does it strike you?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. First off, I believe that any hotel owner is going to price their rooms, competitively for whatever's around them. So, these benefits, in my opinion, don't really get folded into whatever they're offering from a rate standpoint. So, while this is a lower priced property, I would imagine there are going to be competing brands that offer some version of an extended stay product that offer the same sort of benefits that that the whatever that chain is, whether it's Choice or Wyndham or something like that, offers on any stay. And as far as I know, Choice and Wyndham don't have these sorts of restrictions on on their extended stay brands. So this does differentiate Marriott and the Bonvoy program in that way. I haven't been in the hotel industry in a long time. I still know a bunch of folks there. I reached out to a couple of folks that I know just to ask them some general questions. I haven't come across any information that says that a hotel owner pays anything for an elite night credit. That was my question. Like, you and I know that the the owners pay Marriott for points. So part of the GDS agreement that you sign also obligates you to buy a certain number of points per dollar that a guest spends on your reservations in your hotel. And I don't know that there's any cost associated with the elite night credit. So I'm trying to figure out what Marriott's getting at here. I mean, I guess maybe they're trying to thin out the number of elite members that they might have, but this seems like a really odd way to do that. At the end of the day, I think like this just seems to me to be counter to what you'd want from hotel loyalty. Like if I think about this for just a second, let's say Studio Res is located somewhere. I'm a contractor and I'm going to stay there and stay there for a week or two or whatever. And I'm new to the Marriott brand because I've stayed somewhere else before. I mean, those elite nights are part of the gateway drug to get me engaged in the program. If I'm just getting points, I think that's fine. But elite status might earn me some more points. It might make me want to go try and get a vacation with Marriott in the future. So it strikes me as a little bit odd because elite night credits are one of the tools that a brand like Marriott uses to try to make somebody more loyal to the brand. So I just don't see what the upside is here for them.
The only thing left, which we can't do yet because I don't think any of these are open yet, is like, are these rates actually going to be really fantastic rates? Like, is it really going to save you or your employer or people some money on extended stay versus, a Courtyard or Town Place Suites, which I like Town Place Suites from like a stay standpoint. Like, it's one of my favorite, of these quote unquote extended stay, rooms and things. They're always nice. They're always new. You get 5 points. You do get elite night, some benefits and credits and bonus points. So unless these rates are just super duper cheap and it's really what you're going for, which I just can't see anywhere in today's hospitality, like you're just not going to be under $100 a night, right? Which is where I would have to be to probably, consider it. So,
well, more importantly, you're probably not going to be below your competitive set. So like, for example, there's a hotel brand called My Hotel that has a couple locations in Vegas where our restaurants are. And oddly enough, the My Hotel, one of the My Hotels in Vegas is actually right near a hotel that we have an ownership stake in. And, it's an extended service-ish thing like Studio Res seems to be. And My Hotel generally has lower rates than the flagged properties that we have an investment in. But they run consistently. When our rates go up, theirs go up. And when ours go down, theirs go down. And they stay in fairly close parallel to them. It's not like we're $100 more a night for a similar limited service property. So like maybe Studio Res is a little bit less money, but I don't think it's going to be enough less that's going to be the key driver. I mean, hotel owners are going to try and get as much rate as they can.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that these are meant to be just absolutely minimal staffing from an ownership standpoint. So I'm just on their brand page here. Flexible, efficient studios, self-serve food and beverages. Grab a quick meal or snack from our conveniently located vending machines. Weekly housekeeping. The description here is a little suspect. We'll freshen and tidy up once every week so you have more time and energy to do you.
Wow, that's great. I definitely want more time to do me.
On-site fitness, on-site guest laundry, and studio kitchen with fridge, stovetop, and microwave. You bring the cookware, dishes, and utensils. Okay, I'm not. Who's traveling with that? Like, I don't know, man. This seems a little bit.
You don't pack your own dishes when you travel?
Look, man, I'm just saying the majority of people who are going to be on this page that I'm reading before they go and stay, their contractors, whoever's just going to book this, they're not going to read the little fine print that says you got to bring your dishes with you. And every single person's going to walk in that room, look for something to cook on or grab whatever, and then they're going to be like, what in the world? And they're going to go down to a front desk staff that's probably not staffed 24/7, probably some self-check-in things. So, I don't know, man. I think there's some things to work on here. But if you're a hotel owner, right, this seems like a dream, right? You've got lowest cost, you've got low staffing. You don't have to buy, near as many points. This is made to make those owners money, which ultimately expands the Marriott brand and rooms, which is what the CEO has said time and time again he is after, is room expansion.
Right.
And this is, hitting the mark for them, which ultimately, how does that affect, the Marriott financials? Like, that's what is at stake here, rather than necessarily, seeing how many people can get their elite night status and benefits. So just, an interesting play here from both. It looks like the on-hotel experience and the loyalty program.
Yeah, no, I'll be interested to see. I only see one property listed on the Studio Res page in Fort Myers. I'd be interested to maybe drive over and check it out an upcoming trip to Florida. But I don't know. I mean, one of the things that, from my time in the hotel industry that I remember is that, you need a sort of like minimum staffing level to make sure that people don't beat the crap out of your property.
I was about to say, yeah, a certain demographic, I would imagine, would gravitate towards this if they know there's no on-site staff. And again, I don't know the exact plan
and weekly housekeeping, that's a big red flag.
Like, what are people going to walk into after somebody checks out of these rooms? Like, they are going to be just
right,
gross, man. Like,
yeah.
A lot of surprises here in Fort Myers awaiting.
Yeah, dating back to the 90s when I was in the hotel industry, I had a property in Pueblo, Colorado, a Holiday Inn property that had a meth lab in the back building of the two buildings that comprise that property, and that meth lab was what led us to have a company-wide standard for, regardless of how many days the do not disturb tag was on the door, we opened the door every third day and went in and checked the room. And just once
a Holiday Inn in Pueblo, Colorado. That's some good stories. There's got to be some good stories.
Oh,
beyond the meth lab being a part of the hotel. But
that's a phone call you get. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, at a different property I work for, and woken up to be told I need to get to Pueblo as soon as possible because the police are there to bust a meth lab. It's like, okay, well, but yeah, the hotel geek in me, the hotel operator in me says, not opening the door to a room for a week is a recipe for, like, you get what you pay for at that point. Then, I mean, you just be prepared for whatever's inside those four walls. It gives me pause, Mr. Kerr.
I wish the folks in Fort Myers good luck, and I agree. Probably Fort Myers once every 3 years would happily drive over and check out the property and see what's going on over there.
I think what I'm hearing you say is that we have a meetup scheduled coming soon.
The Studio Res
Fort Myers meetup, and we can do whatever we want in that room for 6 days, and then we can bust town. I hope nobody from Marriott is watching this and double checks our reservation when we come into town.
or maybe please do.
All right. Can I? Do you think I can borrow your soapbox for a few minutes?
Take it. It's all yours. I sanded it. It's nice and smooth.
I appreciate it. I'm not very handy, so I appreciate you doing all those repair things for me. So United shot me an email this week. I was walking around Vegas and I got this email, and I immediately called fellow very frequent United flyer Faz Mahmood from Dots, Lines, and Destinations, and started screaming something very typical in Vegas. Just so we don't get the explicit language, just say I was screaming F-ers over and over again as I walked down the street. And Faz is like, "What's wrong?" And I'm looking at this email from United that says, congratulations on your million miler status. We just want to advise you of some upcoming changes. And so for million milers, not 2 million, 3 million, or 4 million milers, there's only really one other benefit to the status. You get lifetime Premier Gold status, regardless of what your status level is. And then the only other benefit, because they don't give anything at the time you cross 1 million miles, like Delta does, for example. The only other benefit is that your companion, somebody you'd name, designate, who, at this point lives with you, gets to match your status level for as long as you have a higher status level. So if I'm Premier 1K, my wife gets to be Premier 1K. United has announced that they are doing away with that as of 2027. She has this year and next year. So 4 months after qualifying for lifetime status and flying 1 million paid miles on United, they've decided to change the benefit, Mr. Kerr. I have a number of thoughts.
Whenever we talked about lifetime status in the recent episodes, right? This is
Yes.
where I was like, I can't make decisions now based on the future, right? If it happens, it happens, but I'm not going to change my behavior because who knows if these things are going to exist. That is unfortunate for you, my friend.
Yeah. So let's just say right at the top, you've told me so in the past. I don't know if you remember this, but if you go back, I don't know, 15 years ago, a bunch of flyers actually sued United when they changed their lifetime program, and they lost in court when United's explanation to the judge was, yes, our definition of lifetime is until we change our mind on what lifetime is again. So there's precedent here, and so it's not like I'm going to court anytime soon, but I found things a few interesting. So set aside my general anger at, I somehow convinced myself they wouldn't do it to me. But so you know the status ranks at United well, but for our listeners or viewers, if they don't remember them, you've got Premier Gold status, which is now what companions get at 1 million miler status. Premier Platinum is the next level up, and then Premier 1K. So what I'm hearing from some agents I've talked to at the 1K desk and just general stuff around the interrebs, this part of the big concern here is that there are a bunch of 1Ks that are very upset that they can't clear their upgrades. Plus points don't clear. We know this is an issue. United is coming up with new ways to use your plus points because the upgrades aren't clearing. So the argument was made, that, hey, this move was probably made to thin out the 1K ranks to some degree. I don't think it thins it out to a large degree, but let's just say it does for just a second, Mr. Kerr. Work with me here in that world of suspension of disbelief. In that case, why wouldn't you give my companion platinum status? Why knock it all the way down to gold? The only perceivable benefits that I see, if I'm a 1K, the only perceivable benefit I see that my wife would get at that point is extra economy plus seating when she's traveling with others, because gold status is you plus a companion, and platinum is you plus 8 companions. So now if I'm somewhere on a business trip and my wife wants to fly to me with the kids for us to have a vacation afterwards, which you and I know is something typically that you and I would do, I'm going to have to pay for economy plus seating for one of my kids because my wife will have gold status and she can only assign one economy plus seat for free. And it just seems like such a penny pinching move not to at least give platinum status for somebody who's spending at least $28,000 with the airline on a yearly basis.
I don't know, man. So here's what I'll say from my vast experience now in 4 years of vast experience of 4 years. It's being facetious. Everybody calm down. Sometimes we miss things because we have blinders on. Sometimes we don't think things all the way through. Sometimes we're looking at anything that we think is going to make a tangible difference, and we just forget some of the emotions to what we're doing. It can just happen. I don't know if that's what happened to the folks in the room in Chicago and United who plan these things. Again, I have been in those rooms a few times with those folks now. I don't ever get the impression that this is something to punish you, per se. Maybe it could just be a miss, because I don't know the reason.
Yeah.
If you're bumping them down to platinum, then all your 1Ks are still going to clear their upgrades because they're ahead of all the companions, so
Right.
Problem solved. But what does that mean from, again, to go back to the balance sheet thing, just like we were talking about with Marriott, just like I think we're going to talk about with, whoever we talk about today, it's going to be, what is that actual cost? I would love to know what the incremental costs of Premier Platinum is over Premier Gold to the airline, like how they recognize that on
Yeah,
and how
me
many
too.
companions we're talking about. Because in my mind, how many times is Michelle flying without you a year?
Right. No, I think that's the thing.
Two,
Yeah.
three,
Right.
never. Like
Right.
probably the case for most companions. Like you're the 1K, not your player too. So
Mhm.
how often is the spouse or the companion actually using these benefits a year? A couple,
Right. Right.
probably. So like,
Well,
why?
and
To your
and
point,
add another wrinkle to this. Um, it's only a couple times a year, and it's only when I spend over
$28,000.
$24,000 with the brand. So 24,000 plus segments, or $28,000 without the segments. So it's an indoor. It's not like lifetime status on American where I'm always going to be lifetime platinum, and my companion gets lifetime platinum. This is essentially the only way that Michelle earns 1K status in any given year is if I spent 28 G's. So I mean, there's significant revenue the airline's getting from me, and a couple of times a year they're throwing me an economy plus seat. Like that doesn't seem like a bad equation. And while I don't agree with downgrading me from 1K from companion status at all, I just feel like if that was the decision that needed to be made, they absolutely punted on making the right decision here, because they could have made a decision that, at least in my opinion, would have very minimal extra cost by saying, okay, we're going to give Michelle platinum status twice a year.
yeah, it's puzzling, and I can only imagine how frustrating for you to think you've got this amazing benefit for your spouse lined up now for as long as you continue to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then it's not. What did our buddy Foz say over there at Dots, Lines, and Destinations, who I do listen to every week, including
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
yesterday on my walk, I was listening to Foz and Seth this week.
Let's just say he was very relieved that this change was only for million miler, as he's
And
going
not,
for 4 million miler.
yeah,
But he was not terribly surprised by the change.
I just can't ever see me getting to 1,000,000 miles with Delta. I'm gonna log in while we keep calling.
I think you have 300 and change from the last time you and I
and
talked
making
about this.
700, or I guess round trip to New York and back's 1,400 a week. Like I'm not making a dent here, like not anything I ever have to worry about. My dad is a 1,000,000 miler on Delta from all
I didn't
of
know
his.
that. Huh.
Oh yeah, my childhood was driving up to Atlanta on Sundays. All of us as a family, we'd go to church, we'd go to lunch, we'd relax for a couple hours in the afternoon, and then we'd take the about hour drive up from LaGrange, Georgia, where I grew up, to Hartsville, Jackson. Drop my dad off. We would go all the way to the gate because in the 90s you could do that. I remember when my dad got a Sky Club membership. We could all go in there, and I would sit. It was the coolest thing in the world. It was not overcrowded. I think there was no credit card. Like it was. I would get Sprite and grenadine for a cherry Coke, and then the little cup of snacks that they had, and we would just be looking at planes. I'd be like, "Oh man, I'm so cool! Like we're so cool." Then we'd watch him get to the gate. He would walk to the end of the jet bridge. You know those little slits in the windows right before you board, where you can just look out and see what's going. We could see my dad. He would stick his face and wave from the end of the jet bridge, and then get on the plane.
I love that.
And then we would go off to Morrison's Cafe to eat. If anybody knows what a Morrison's is, it's like an old family style cafeteria. You get your tray, go down the line, get your one meat, get your two sides, and your roll.
Oh, it sounds like a Woolworth Cafe. That's what
Yeah, like wow, I'm not that old, but yeah, Woolworth Cafe, same thing. Somebody out there listening knows what a Morrison's is. And that was my childhood. We do that. My dad would fly for work all the time, and then obviously we moved to Europe. He would fly back and forth all the time from Europe back to Georgia, and I bet he's probably close to 2 million. I should have him log in and check it out.
Yeah.
I have not even looked. I need to ask him. I haven't looked into the Delta 1,000,000 miler program too much, except I do know you get to pick that one gift like you were alluding to.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually pretty nice that you get to choose. But again, like
American used to do that too. My dad has a bunch of gifts from American over the years from his million miler status.
But there's no way I'm gonna it's gonna be decades before I probably leisure travel. Maybe in my 60s at this time I get there. If I 324,463.
Yeah, okay, that sounds about right. That sounds like what I remember.
Yeah, and at 1,400 a week, we'll do the quick math here. I have to do the math. So think of something to talk about while I do this.
700,000. So that's 500 trips.
We're gonna do it exactly, assuming that majority of divided by. We're looking at 482 and a half round trips to New York. So, unless I start getting those paid international Delta One flights to Europe, which is not going to happen. Dude, I have to go to Europe.
Somewhere Anker is rubbing his hands saying yes.
Yeah, he's like
Crew 500 times in New York.
He would love that. I was looking. I have to go to Paris and London in May for work. And I was like, let's see, just out of curious, these business folks that are flying the Atlanta nonstops on their company's dime. Guess how much Delta One is on the Atlanta to Paris nonstop and then the return London to Atlanta nonstop on any of the multiple daily flights that they have between themselves.
As one ways or as strung together as a round trip?
Strung together as a round trip. Yeah, a round trip. This is May, so peak time, right? I'll give you that hint. Peak time.
6,400.
$11,000. $11,000 is what Delta can charge the corporate expense accounts around here, I guess, man. But it's just like, holy cow. If I fly JetBlue connecting in Boston and JFK, how much is that round trip? Atlanta, JFK, Paris, Open Jaw, London, Boston, Atlanta. 2,600.
Yeah, okay.
In Mint.
Yeah.
Which is way better than a Delta 767 coffin class.
And also less than $11,000.
Less than $11,000. A couple of those and you're diamond for the year, man. Just you're done.
Wow. Well, I will leave this discussion of United with two thoughts. First off, I want to thank United because I didn't know any of that stuff about your dad and the travel. And as crappy as the lifetime status is, like thinking about you as a kid and at the airport and stuff, I have some of those same memories with my dad. And I've known you a long time, and I didn't know any of that, and that's all really cool. So, United,
don't I make a lot more sense now? Everybody's like, "Oh, he makes more sense now."
Thank you for all of that, United. The last thing I'll say, just my own opinion. I understand there are folks who are going to disagree with me on this, but from a value proposition standpoint, the way I see this, United says $28,000, spend that in calendar year 2025, and you're going to earn 1K status. So the way I see what they just did is like, me spending $28,000 by August, which is pretty typical for me on United, and earning 1K status, and then United coming back in October and saying, you know what, we changed our mind. You need to spend $35,000 this year. You're not there yet. And I just view this as moving the line. And I think they could have grandfathered folks in. I think they could have considered dropping to platinum. I think they could have said companion status X number of times a year for your companion. I think they could have done a lot of things other than just completely removing the benefit, because Premier Gold status is fine, but not terribly inspiring. And the reason why I stretched for the million was so that Michelle would have my status, and she was really excited about it. And she's no longer excited. I've said to you a number of times, I'm not going to go out of my way to book American, but I can tell you, I mean, they've got this loyalty point promo in March where you get 500 loyalty points per segment flown, and the times for Dulles Phoenix on United just don't work for me, even though they have a nonstop. So I'm flying American, and I'm going to give American Dulles Phoenix, Las Vegas, and then on the way home, United wanted $2,400 for a first class seat, Vegas to Dulles, and it's like, well, maybe I'll, depending on when I leave, maybe I'll just do the stop in Chicago overnight thing. And so they're out of what they could have gotten, I don't know, almost $2,000 out of me next week. And they're going to get, probably $300 or $400. Just is what it is.
Some other interesting hub captive fares, just like you mentioned there for United and Dulles. I have for obviously Delta and Atlanta here. Just really interesting things. We talk about skip lagging. I continue to see it about once every 6 months. It comes into the news cycle again. So speaking of my dad, shout out to Mr. Bob Kerr, or Pops as all the grandkids call him. He has his 70th birthday party in Charleston, South Carolina this weekend, or by the time you're listening to this, still this upcoming weekend for this episode. So I have to fly I'm flying to Tucson for 24 hours. I got a round of golf with the conference organizers, a bunch of meetings. I speak the next morning. I leave straight from my talk to the airport, and I got to fly Tucson, Atlanta, Charleston next Friday. Flying first class back because I'm not stopping in Atlanta. I'm continuing to Charleston. How much, Ed, do you think flying through Atlanta to Charleston dropped the first class fare instead of terminating in Atlanta from Tucson to Atlanta? Take a guess.
I'm going to guess. And what day of the week is this?
This is a Friday.
So Tucson, Atlanta, Charleston is probably 400 and change, and Tucson, Atlanta is probably 1,300.
You're not far off. Not far off. So Tucson, Atlanta, Charleston, I paid $459 for first class, which I feel is a pretty daggum, like.
You're talking 4 total hours of flying?
Yeah. If I terminated in Atlanta, $1,079 instead of $459.
Damn, I'm good at this game.
Yeah. So the economy ticket from Tucson to Atlanta was going to be $479.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Instead of paying $479 for economy Tucson Atlanta, I'm going to pay $459 fly first class Tucson Atlanta Charleston, and I'm going to work for 4 hours with my laptop out instead of sitting in the back with my
Right.
elbows tucked in and not doing anything. And I was just like, holy moly, man, this is exactly why people skip leg, because that's absolutely outrageous. The other interesting United fare I will bring up, and I've thought for the last 2 weeks this has been a mistake. Guess how much United is charging Atlanta to Newark in first class on more than just the 6 a.m. flight, but we'll call it 3 flights a day. You can get this first class fare from Atlanta to Newark. Pretty much wide open right now as long as you're booking a week in advance.
$1,400.
$219.
Wow.
$219.
Really?
$214 now. First class, man. On multiple flights today. Look at it, Google Flights all the time right now. Click through. Unfortunately, on the A319, which is not
And
a
will be delayed frequently into Newark.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? But like, I've told you time and time again, Delta's $499 Atlanta to LaGuardia one way in economy. So why in the world? Like, that's why I've been flying to Newark and JFK for everybody tracking. Like, I'm not trying to say built some money here. I never fly into LaGuardia, as nice as that would be, because it's literally double the price for economy than what you can catch on some of these first class fares to Newark or JFK, which then allows me to work, for less money. So are you seeing?
Yeah.
You had to pull up these fares. Are you seeing this, man?
That's insane.
So shouldn't I, what is loyalty worth, right? Shouldn't I just be buying $214 first class tickets to New York in front of United? And
yeah, just given the fact that we joke about Newark being a crappy airport, but I mean, in terms of delays, but it's not like LaGuardia is that much better. I mean, like, it's going to have its fair share of bumps and bruises when things start going sideways. Newark, I think, is worse, but not worse enough that getting 2 hours of work in a first class seat isn't worth it.
$214. Really, the concern again goes to, what does 2026 look like for me?
Yeah.
If I get that spin to United this year and that's great, but then next year, something changes and most of the family travels on Delta, and I've just got no status, no Sky Miles. As much as I don't want to collect Sky Miles, I have to have them from time to time living in Atlanta to get the family somewhere, and then I'm paying for check bags and no seats, and it's like, but the absolute rational side of me is like, dude, you should be buying $214 first class tickets to New York and getting work done up there on the laptop. If the Wi-Fi works, which, hey, we saw the first Starlink installed on the United regional jet this week. Hope they can, rush those out. But, I would love to hear from folks like, hey, don't worry about Delta. Book those $214 first class tickets, get your work done, and then worry about 26 when it gets here.
Yeah, I had horrific Wi-Fi on the way back from Vegas again on the old 737-900s. We'll put our listener question aside for a week, and we'll talk about United Plus points next week. Let's try I want to do this one Slack question just because I think it's fun, and then I want to talk through this Frontier thing, and I don't want Jeremiah to kill us for the length of the show. So we'll throw this text up on the screen, but for listeners, Michael Glick from the Slack community has a question that's so right up our alley, Mr. Kerr. He's booking a long flight overseas, and he has 3 options for a layover. And so I want to know which choice you're taking here of the 3. Option 1, a trip that includes a 19-hour layover in Dubai and a 24-hour layover in Istanbul. That's choice number 1. Choice number 2, a trip with 40 hours in Dubai and 10 hours in Istanbul. Or option number 3, a trip that includes a 19-hour layover in Dubai and a 26-hour layover in Cairo. Mr. Kerr, tell me, which one of those 3 are you choosing?
I like Michael's note at the end that says, I'm building the trip to Belgium around a late night decision last week to burn a few Amex membership rewards to try the Emirates A380 first class Dulles to Dubai. Now, when he says a few, Michael, that's not a few. That's a lot. And significant fuel surcharges. But good on you, my man. That's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You need to do that. Also love that Dulles to Belgium somehow includes Dubai, Cairo, and Istanbul. Look, I'm doing the option A that gives you 19 hours in Dubai and 24 hours in Istanbul. That's enough time to actually do at least one meaningful thing in each city versus the other things. And then I'm also just avoiding Cairo right now for a lot of reasons, although it's a place I absolutely want to go one day. So option A, 19 hours in Dubai, gives you plenty of time to catch a day room, get sleep, book 1 night in a hotel, and then, see the Burj Khalifa, see that main area down there, see some of the ridiculous things that there are to see in Dubai. And in Istanbul, I've talked about it. Went there a couple years ago for work to meet the folks at Turkish Airlines. One of my favorite cities that I've spent time in. 24 hours is enough time to go and do an amazing walking tour of the city and just get that, again, not near enough time, but option A is where I'm going for that.
Yeah, I'd say two things. First off, I mentioned a couple people something that you said last week. It's probably one of my favorite things that you said in an episode this year, which was you laughing at me and saying, yeah, only in this world, Ed, would you say, yeah, I guess I'm going to Tokyo now that I have flights to and from Taipei.
Yeah.
So, a different country, 4 hours away. It is the world that we live in, and I would absolutely say I am 100% with you on option one. A trip that includes a 19-hour layover in Dubai and a 24-hour layover in Istanbul says that we can do one cool thing in each of those two places. So I am 100% on board with you, Mr. Kerr, based on Ben from 1 Mile at a Time's experience recently in Cairo. I'm not a huge fan of needing to be there anytime soon. I wouldn't necessarily be against it, but Dubai and Istanbul sound like much better choices to me. So Michael, we are going to live vicariously through you on those layovers because I know that if I had both of those layovers on one trip, it would take me about a month to recover. So,
Yeah.
All right, so let's dig into this Frontier thing and then get the heck out of here. So Gary, View from the Wing, wrote this up, and I don't know how new this is, but since you didn't mention it in your Frontier Tales, I have to imagine it's either new or just something that they've started to increase the price on more recently. So they've got this charge, which we've seen a charge similar to this. Spirit charged a fee to book tickets that you could avoid by going to the airport to book a flight. And the reason why airlines do this is to avoid taxes on part of your ticket. Frontier has a charge they're calling the Kerr interface charge. And we'll see if we can't get Jeremiah to put up a screenshot here of my experience and maybe Mr. Kerr's as well. Oddly enough, we both picked Orlando as our destination when we searched for this. In my example, with a base fare of like $100, total cost like $150, my carrier interface charge, the fee that I could avoid if I went to the airport to buy my ticket, is $23 per ticket, or call it, more than 15% of the base ticket price, which is just shocking. And probably on the other end of the spectrum, yours was how much for?
It was a 7-cent base fare for a total of $19 fare from Atlanta to Orlando, and $3.60 was the carrier interface charge.
The 7-cent fare I love, and that's not new to Frontier. But I think what's interesting is that they're scaling, it seems to be at least from our very light touch searching here, that they're scaling this fee based on the prevailing airfare, where my airfare is $100 and they're charging $23, and Kerr's airfare is just a handful of pennies, and they're still charging $3 for this fee. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on just the range on this fee, like up to $23 a ticket.
So everybody, Frontier Tales. We should have a session. This is another Frontier Tales as we go through here. Yeah, obviously I've been pretty bummed that I don't have the status this year, and that the great deals of flying Atlanta to Orlando with the family are seemingly over. Hey, fair enough. Frontier probably wasn't making any money on that. We know they weren't, so why would they continue to give me the status? However, looking at this exact same experience now, my wife and my mother-in-law are taking a cruise together, just the two of them, later this spring, and they need to fly Atlanta to Orlando to get over to Port Canaveral. And I was like, oh, great, I'll just throw them on these cheap Frontier fares. However, if you're taking a cruise, they're both going to have a checked bag, and they're both going to have a carry-on. The updated bundling that Frontier has introduced, I'll be honest with you, man, the way they've done this is pretty clever, because if you want to get to a checked bag included with the fare, guess which of the bundles you have to do.
Oh, is it the top one?
You have to do the top. You have to do now the business fare is what they call it.
Okay.
You have to do the business fare.
I'm behind the times.
Because if you buy any of the other bundles, you still have to do a check bag, and the check bag from Atlanta to Orlando is $55 per bag on top of the bundles that you have to do that get you a carry-on, which you're going to have to do. By the time we get to all I want is a carry-on and check bag, we're just as expensive as Delta, and if that's the option, we all know that because of reliability issues, we're going to fly Delta instead of Frontier. So they've really priced themselves out with this bundling model for me, and I'm not going to put the wife and mother-in-law on Frontier. I'm going to put them on Delta. And it's just gotten interesting. Now, on top of that, if we could go to the airport and save, in my case, $3 a person, probably not going to make the difference. But this is the same thing that Spirit's done for years and has been covered. And I Wrote an article back in the day where I went up to the Orlando airport and bought some Spirit tickets in person and saved these
Yep.
fees. And if it's $23 per person, I got a family of 4, then yeah, I'll if I'm at the airport anyways every week, I'll walk by the Frontier desk and save $100 and buy them in person. $3, probably not going to. I think Gary's point that this is tax evasion. I read the article. I'll be honest, I just don't understand enough about this to have an opinion on it, whether it is tax evasion or not. Either way, it's not a great experience. And my larger point is with this fee and the pricing of these bundles, where if I want to get a checked bag, I have to buy the top bundle. It's just as expensive as Delta. And then, what's the point here anyways, if you're going to get the less than favorable operational reliability for the same price as Delta?
Right. And they've really jacked up the cost of status, because even the status challenges are significantly more expensive in terms of what you'd have to spend on their credit card or things like that. So I do think while there may be future Frontier tales on the show, I think you absolutely hit the most recent sweet spot in the Frontier program, and it may be the last, true sweet spot just based on the way these prices look like they're going. I agree with you 100%. I drive to the airport to save $100 for the family of 4 and ticket things. I'm 20 minutes from the airport, so not a big deal. But I don't think the average person really understands that that's how this fee is loaded into their ticket.
No, I don't think so either. And then again, just looking at these bundlings that they've done, it's they've really designed it around the check bag. Like if you want to get to the check bag, there's no way to do it and not make it comparable to Delta. So
yeah.
If there's value out there, then I'll absolutely go after it and we'll fly Frontier again. But I just don't see that right now for my personal situation. But nothing against
Did you see when you were still flying Frontier on a somewhat regular basis, did you see a lot of policing on the carry-on bags in terms of like weight and size and stuff like that?
Never in Atlanta, ever.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen somebody like they do over in Europe. Didn't see them digging in on that.
I saw it. Spirit down in Fort Lauderdale. They're on it. They're hammering you at they will make every single person, which is one of their bigger bases. Why I say Fort Lauderdale, making every single person put the bag in the spacer. If it doesn't fit, you're paying. The only thing I ever saw Frontier do in Atlanta is if people did have a carry-on and they didn't have a carry-on on their boarding pass, then they would occasionally pull them out and say, "Hey, you gotta pay for the carry-on," and that always led. That was $100 if you bought it at the gate for a carry-on.
Ooh.
And that always led to massive arguments, as you can expect, in the poor gate agent just saying, the rules, you got to pay or you're not getting on the flight. And then people start to lose their mind. You're like, oh, well, how long is this going to delay us? Mm-hmm. But as far as sizing, never, ever on Frontier did I see that.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's been my experience as well, both on what I've seen and also what I've heard from folks. So interesting that they have a different model there. All right, well, we know what your travel plans are like for the next little bit. We know you got a little Tucson jaunt and then off to Charleston for some family stuff. When this episode drops, I will be pretty close to my next trip, which is thankfully a leisure one, going to Disneyland for a few days for a little fun adventure, the 30th anniversary of the Indiana Jones ride, which my son is a huge Indiana Jones fan. We're super stoked to be meeting up with Slack member Molly and our hubby Kevin. Stephanie will also be there from the Slack community, and one of my son's heroes, the real life Indiana Jones stunt double, Justin, will be with us. So gonna be a fun one. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, I've often been mistaken for Indiana Jones myself as I've strolled the Atlanta airport. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, is that Justin?" And I'm like, "No, it's just me. It's Richard." But
did I tell you? I don't know if we talked about this on the show. Did I talk about my son and our recent meeting with his teachers at school about his career choices?
No, but this sounds interesting.
Yeah. So my son has what's called an IEP, Individualized Education Plan for Dyslexia, and so as part of moving to high school, they interview kids now a little bit, and they try to figure out what it is they want to be, and they try to tailor some of the classes towards that because there are multiple paths nowadays versus where it was you and I. And it's like, well, here's your math, and here's your science, and here's your English. Yeah. So they, as part of our yearly IEP meeting, they go through Charlie's answers to these questions, and so they're like, oh, the case managers, just go through the stuff, and Charlie gave us his career choices. We asked him what he thought he might want to be when he grew up, and he gave us 3 choices, and we thought they were really interesting, so we want to share them with you. I'm like, okay. He said he wanted to be a lawyer, a doctor, or a stunt actor.
Maybe he could be all 3. That would be the most.
And then
the most interesting man in the world.
Can you explain this to us? Like, yes, we can, but it won't make sense to you.
I thought it was going to be like professional Lego set designer or stuntman or doctor.
All right, Mr. Kerr, safe travels. I can't wait to hear what things are like for you after a few more flights. I'm curious if the anxiety calms down a bit after a few flights, if it becomes a little bit more normal now that you've had the clot scare.
We'll find out here in just a couple days.
All right, Mr. Kerr, safe travels. I will report back to you from Disneyland in just a handful of days. And if you're paying attention, I think you'll probably see Mr. Kerr and I wearing the exact same thing when we record with Summer and Julian in about 45 minutes for the episode that we're going to drop while both of us are traveling. Lots of miles between now and then for Mr. Kerr and I until we upload again. We've got miles to go. I just want you to know, and very, very important information, I tried oat milk today. Didn't end well.